All the way from Bokota village in Limpopo, South Africa, we bring you Missionary Minds, where you can learn about family, church history, biblical worldview issues, and of course, missions, all from the mind of a real-world missionary of almost 20 years. Today is our part 2, Buddy Paul, of how to find a wife, what we were discussing last time. And I know our listeners really enjoyed this topic, and a lot of young men are in this stage of life, or young women are also in this stage of life, not thinking through these issues. So we're moving on to part 2 today, and I'll let you kick it off for us. Over to you, Mfundisi.
You know, we might want to begin with just the question, and that is really how young are the people when they're thinking about being married for the first time? I think the average age, now this is average, my understanding for South Africa is 35 years old for a man. I think it's the highest or one of the highest in the world. So this is actually very important because we live in a society today, and it's not just South Africa, but most places around the world, that the rates for first-time marriage are so much higher. My parents, both born in 1952, married in the 1970s. They've told me a number of times, if you weren't married by 23 or 24, people are looking around saying, what are you waiting for? So that's telling. You're talking, I think the United States now is something like 32 years old. Remember, that's just the average. That's the average age that someone is getting married. So this is a very important topic because it seems as though marriage is just disappearing, or it's not until we get 3 decades underneath our belt that we actually start thinking about, can we say the most important institution that God has created, and that is men get married, they find a woman, and have children. And this seems to be something that has been lost. Even before we get into these items, let me ask you, you're in your early 30s now, a couple years married. What would you say is the reason why marriage is so often delayed in our era today? Again, 1950s, at least in the US, I think the average age was around, let's say, 20 for a woman, 21, a couple years older for a man. Now you're talking 10 years older. What do you think causes that?
I think there are a number of reasons, and just to take a shot at a few, primarily the teaching of the culture around marriage. God created everything and said it was good. And we have the culture now coming to this institution, this beautiful institution God has created, and calling it bad, either by their words or by their actions with the divorce rate, how husbands treat their wives, how wives treat their husbands. And then going beyond that, you have the normal things like materialism and selfishness, people wanting to be their own person, not wanting to join with another, thinking children are a burden, thinking that all of life has to be absorbed before getting married, and the list can go on. But those are a couple of reasons.
Yeah, I agree. And I would add maybe one, which would be we live in an era of easy sex, and that is, there was a time when if you wanted to have sexual relations, you had to get married, and to be married at a certain age, you had to be impressive. Like you had to have it going on. It makes me think of 1 Corinthians 7:2, which says, because of the temptation to sexual immorality, here's the solution. Every man should take his own wife. So that means there's really that domino. I want to have this sexual fulfillment, which is a God-given desire that we ought to have as men and as women. But in order to get that, our society said, even in a non-Christian home, our society said, you have to get married.
Yes.
But now that can be so easily fulfilled outside of marriage without having to cost you any kind of social capital of any furrowed brows and bad looks. It's like easy.
Yes,
right?
Yes. And I think in some senses, women are the gatekeepers because they put the bars up and say, you have to cross this bar before you get access to me. And so that's dropped terribly low, especially with the feminist movement, sexual revolution. And then by extension, parents as well. If parents haven't taught the young girls well, they grow up to be loose and not protectors of this valuable gift that the man seeks after.
And lest we sound as though we're just hammering the young people. Your parents did it right. Look how early they got married, but now you're doing it all wrong. Let's be honest about how our parents or grandparents got a lot of things wrong as well. Did they model for us those great marriages? And in fact, it was our parents that skyrocketed with these divorce rates, right? And now the young people are looking back and saying, I don't want that. I grew up in a broken home and I saw the fights and I don't want that. So we're not throwing just this generation underneath the bus and saying, you're getting this all wrong. The prior generation got a lot of things wrong too. But what we want to do ultimately is follow what the Bible says. So maybe let's just review a few of the points that we gave last time. The first one was that sheep don't marry goats. That is, always marry a Christian. And so we looked at a couple examples in 1 Corinthians 7, where the widow may remarry, but as long as it's in the Lord. We looked at 2 Corinthians 6, where it says that we're not to be unequally yoked. We looked at Genesis 24, when they're looking for a wife for Isaac. And at the very beginning, he says, do not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites. So this is like rule number one. You can, there's so many choices, or where do I even start? Here's where you start. At least consider if you just consider the sheep, you just wiped out like 75% of the possibilities. So all those goats over there, they're not even an option. You don't date them. You don't consider them. We would say Christians only consider sheep. Point number 2, we talked about praying biblical prayers. Make sure that you pray specifically for your wife. Number 3, we said fish where there's fish. And that is put yourself, decide what kind of woman you want, what kind of man you want, and then put yourself in that particular setting. Now, you were a part of Antioch for many years, and as a city, church, lots going on, Monash, university life. Talk to me a little bit about that setting and how it was conducive for finding a spouse. And then maybe some weaknesses that you saw, men that weren't getting married, and the reason is because they were just in the wrong ponds.
Yeah, that's good. And the first thing that comes to mind is how I remember being in a counseling situation and someone was making comments about the culture at Antioch and how focused on marriage it is. And the person who was counseling said, when scripture says, let marriage be held in honor, if I see a church that's doing that, I want to be at that church where there's a high view of marriage and the risk is falling off the horse on that side. And so at Antioch, with a culture where marriage is encouraged and having children is encouraged, it really lit a fire in many of the young people's hearts to desire marriage. And here you're all drinking from the same well, being the pulpit. And so you're learning together and you're spending time together, young adults, different ministries, church camp, and you're getting to know one another, which made it conducive. One of the challenging parts, I would say, and just getting to what you're saying, is that with some young men, they're either looking around and there seems like there's too much choice and they're not pulling a trigger. That's one of the downsides. Or other men who keep to themselves, they're so recluse in their own little circle or their own little activities, and that hinders. They're not like going to the right ponds, as it were, even though they're in a larger church.
Yeah. So a great pond would be local church.
Yes.
What else?
I would say once you're in your local church and you're interacting with other local churches, if you're in other environments, like let's say you're in a Christian school, a Christian university, let's say you have other activities going around in your life. And this is going back to what you're saying about make sure this person's a Christian. So make sure you're in a place, in a pond, where you'll find Christians preferably. There isn't a high chance that you'll find a Christian in a very secular pond that's known for ill living.
Yeah, yeah. Next one, we said this very specifically. We said, note her beauty, prize her name. And we said it that way because we want to have a balance that actually beauty does matter. Physical beauty is important. And we looked at all of these scriptures of the past where the scripture seems to go out of its way in Song of Solomon and with the matriarchs of this person was beautiful. And this is not just beautiful spiritually. This is so-and-so had a beautiful figure. So-and-so was beautiful to look at. So-and-so was a head turner type thing. So yes, note her beauty. That's normally the first thing that grabs you. But in the end, the most important thing should be her name, that is, in the sense of her character. So look for someone that has the beauty of the heart, an imperishable beauty that will not pass away. But we ought not to think that that's the only thing that's important. And then finally, I think we closed it off last time with, which is have cash in your pocket. If you don't have cash in your pocket, you're not going to marry my daughter, and actually, you're not even going to date my daughter. That now we preface this by saying, we're not saying, look, when you're in your early 20s, you don't have much money, and how many great marriages start out where they're poor as church mice. But even if they're poor as church mice, the man has to provide for the wife. So he has to somehow communicate, I have cash in my pocket. Practically, what is this going to look like? That means he picks her up. He always pays for the meal. Ladies, if the guy does not, if this is a group going out, 5 guys and 5 girls are going out and they're going to the ball game, I can see everyone takes their own bill. But if a guy is taking you out, he is immediately establishing the leadership and that he's going to provide. So men, this is a non-negotiable. If you take a girl on a date, you're always paying for her. And ladies, you should expect that. Now, it might be a thing where there's 2 kinds. He could be clueless and doesn't know, or he's not clueless, he's just cheap and he doesn't want to pay for anything. But that would be a deal breaker for me. If a guy did not want to pay, that's going to tell you something about him. So have cash in your pocket.
Yeah.
Is that the expected norm? Talk about city life, South Africa. I'm not even going to narrow it to Christian and non-Christian. Let's just say generally expected 25-year-old Thabo is taking out 23-year-old Tinsalo, and they're going to Mug and Bean. What's going to happen?
Yeah, they're definitely different South Africas. If you're in very well-told Christian circles, being in the church that I came from, Antioch, then what we expect will be done. The man will be paying. But I think in the world, oh boy, it's trouble in that everyone has been so filled up with the imbibing of the drink of the age that, the woman should pay 50, the man pays 50. Sometimes a woman may even be offended that you want to pay for her. It's like, do you think I can't pay for myself? And the world is screaming at her, stand on your own 2 feet. Dependence is weakness. And it's got it all wrong.
I don't believe, deep down inside, even feminist, I don't believe that they want to pay for the meal themselves. Now, they've been told so. They've been told to do that. Hey, we're all equal. You have to, I can make just as much money as you. Deep inside, they want to be protected.
Yeah.
They want someone to open the door for them. They definitely want someone to pay for the meal. They want them to open the car door. They want someone to give them the jacket. They're constantly against their nature being told, you don't want this, but you can't escape nature. Dogs don't meow and cats don't bark. And God has created men with deeper voices. Can't change it. And God has created men to be the leaders and the providers and to find great fulfillment in leading and providing, which is why men hate being told what to do by women. It's against their nature. And it's right. And women want to be protected. They want to follow. And they may not say that if you get enough university education. The cat is trying to bark, but it won't take too much to change their minds with logic.
That's good.
Okay, let's give some new ones. Number 6, ask permission to date. So, I understand there might be some early stages where there's group gatherings, but in the beginning, the man needs to establish even why he's dating in the first place. The purpose of dating, which I like the word courting better because it communicates purposeful dating. The purpose is not just to hang out. If you want to hang out, go as a group. No big deal. Although I think it's that would be guys and girls don't do that by themselves. I can't see a guy and a girl hanging out by themselves, but there's no kind of fire going on there. That's not natural. But if you're alone, he needs to establish, I'm doing this because I'm looking for a wife. If he's looking for a wife, then he needs to talk to the father and say, I just want you to know, I'm interested in your daughter and I'm asking permission. I know that's old-fashioned. I think it's biblical. And we see an example of that in the story where they're seeking a wife for Isaac, and this servant goes out, and he's just very upfront with the parents. The parents are very much involved in the process. I think that's important because who cares for that child more than the parents, and who knows that child more, and they can see things that the child can't always see. And when I say child, I don't care if they're 25. I think it's important. Talk to me about that. In the Antioch world, is that expected? And then branch out maybe a step and say, what about the secular African world? My understanding, I've had a number of talks like this with even pastors, reformed pastors. I have had reformed pastors who have actually angrily told me, according to African culture, it seems like this is the way. You do not speak to the parents at the early stages of the relationship. In fact, not only it's not even an option, it's offensive to do that. Unpack that for me a little bit.
Yeah, I would say in the Antioch circles, once again, with the teaching we've received, there definitely is that expectation that you would speak to the girl's father, or if the girl's father is not a Christian and you're still trying to see whether this is going to work out, you go speak to her spiritual male guardian, if that's her pastor, her small group leader, or just someone who's guarding the gate, just to get permission to see, like, are you a good enough guy to take this shot? And then in the secular environment, I think definitely, depending on the father, it can be seen as a slap in the face if you just showed up and you expected to ask for his daughter when he's expecting you to show up on the day of Lobola or something. And so what you're trying to achieve in honoring him, he receives as spitting in his face.
Can you unpack why that is, though? So again, we're not saying he's coming to ask for the girl's hand in marriage. This is just the early stages where he says, we're putting the batter together for the cake. We're not baking the cake. We're not putting it into the oven yet, which would be marriage. But we're just starting the process. I would like to pursue so-and-so for marriage, but I don't want to do that if you wouldn't even approve for those early stages. What is in the African mindset, what is the thinking why would that offend them?
Yeah. And I'll just put the caveat out there that I wouldn't be so presumptuous to speak for all the African cultures, the Black African cultures. But from what I understand, we're going through the book on Logic by Isaac Watts, and he speaks about these prejudices that come when someone has to make a judgment. And one of the prejudices he speaks of is that, or one of the ones he says is one of the strongest, is culture and what's been done by our ancestors and forefathers. And so when people have done things a certain way for so long, they aren't even aware that another way exists. And so many men, that's all they heard of from their fathers, their uncles, their grandfathers, all the men around. It's the only way they've seen things being done. And so trying to do things in a foreign way is an assault on the culture.
And since you brought up Watts, maybe we can bring up another one of his points where he says there are some doctrines that it takes several steps to actually prove that particular point. So, for example, if I wanted to prove that here's a pastor's responsibilities, you could just easily go to 1 Timothy 3 or something like that. But if you wanted to prove the Trinity, right, you couldn't go to one verse. You'd actually have to go to this link and the next link, and there'd actually have to be several links until you proved, let's say, the Trinity, or let's say capitalism or something like that. I would think this might be the case as well. Someone might say, show me a verse where it says specifically that a man must ask the father. Well, there's Old Testament examples of that happening, but I would say, well, first of all, we established that a father's responsibility is to care for his children. And one of the means of caring for his children is making sure that they are right spiritually. And what will help them be right spiritually more than outside of salvation, the most important decision in their life, which is choosing a spouse. So you kind of stack these verses, and then you come with that conclusion, which is, men, you're interested in a girl, show respect and ask permission. And then the father, of course, early on, has the right to say either yes or no.
Yes. And I think it's definitely a failure on the cultural part that men don't welcome this. And I wish I could reason with them. I forgot who the author is. He wrote the marriage book, and he speaks of how if a man had a sports car, a nice red Ferrari, and someone says, hey, can I take it out for a spin? He would do all the checks and balances to make sure that the car is protected. And yet, now it comes to something even more precious, men's daughters, and they're not doing those checks and balances, which is very sad, a sad conclusion to make about the culture.
Who would allow someone to drive the Ferrari if you don't know if he has a license, you don't know his history, you don't know if there's insurance on the car?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, next one. Number 7, shoot straight. Shoot straight for a few reasons. Number 1, girls like it when guys make clear decisions. How many times does a man say, where do you want to go? And she says, I'm not sure. You just decide. Make a decision. Shoot straight with your intentions. So men, shoot straight with your intentions. Girls' hearts are fragile. You can easily play games with them. Guys often, for physical pleasure, will say certain things to a girl, and she easily catches on. Girls in general are more naive. The positive side is they're more merciful. The downside would be that they're often more naive. And so men can fool with them. And there's the wicked side of, I want to get you in bed type fooling. Or there's the, we're living morally, but really I don't have any intention of marrying you, but I need someone with me right now, and I need someone to help me, and I don't really have anyone else in the picture right now. Shoot straight. And I think of that example in Genesis 24, where that servant was very clear. I have come here for this purpose, and I have seen your daughter. And even before they said, come, sit down and eat. I'm not even going to sit down and eat yet. I want to be very, very clear. This is what I was told to do. This is what I found. This is exactly what I'm looking for. If you don't want this, if you disagree with it, that's fine. Just be honest. But I'm going to put all my cards on the table. Men, do that. Do that. Shoot straight. Girls will like that. They'll respect you for that. And it will protect you from crushing a girl's heart and stringing them along, thinking that, how many girls have said, I thought for sure we were going to get married. I thought it was just going to be the next year or the next year. He strings it out for a while and then he goes another direction. Don't do that. Shoot straight.
That's a good point, brother. And even that is a rebuke to mistakes I've made in the past. So I'm thankful for that. I want to ask a follow-up question. So how would you advise a young man who desires to shoot straight, but also desires to have some tact to him? I don't imagine you're saying to a young man that he should see a girl in church, walk up to her and say, hey, I want to marry you. How would you advise he kind of work up to that with a bit of game and swag? Well, okay. So first of all, shoot straight doesn't mean
either say on the first date you're going to marry them or not. That's not shooting straight. Shooting straight is being very, very honest. And being very, very honest might mean, I don't know. That's shooting straight. So you could say in the beginning, I just want you to know, let's say it's even pre-dating. And they start talking, early stages. You say, man, this girl is cute. I think about her all the time. And in the beginning, you start sitting each other. There's kind of some vibes going on, but it's not to the level of actually formal courting. Just be honest and say, hey, I just want you to know, it's great hanging out with you. I spent time with you yesterday, and I just want you to know I want to spend time with you again today and tomorrow. Be honest about that. Eventually, though, pretty soon, she's going to want to know, like, where is this going?
Yeah.
Whereas guys are just, the girls are, they're talking to their friends, and they're up late thinking about these things. Pretty early on, he needs to establish what's happening here. And he needs to decide if this is what he wants to pursue, or he needs to say to her, you know what, I am not ready for a relationship right now. I'm at this place in college. I don't really have a good job right now. Just be honest with her. Then let's say you're in the relationship and you're in the relationship early on. I would recommend that he says something like this. I don't know where this is going to lead. I don't want you to think that by being together, I'm promising to marry you. But what I want to do is I want to spend the next several months, let's say, getting to know each other. I want us to ask some really important questions. This is not just going to be, let's hang out and watch a movie. We don't talk at all together, and then we leave and we get back together again. No, I want us to sit together and ask really important questions. And when I ask you these questions, don't be offended as though I'm trying to pry. I'm asking these questions because I want to know the kind of woman I may marry. So I'm going to ask you about kids. I'm going to ask you about your favorite verse. I'm going to ask you about your father and your mother. And I want you to ask me these questions. I just think the Lord's going to bless that kind of thing. Shooting straight, being honest. Yeah, I can think of examples. I can think of one example in the past, and I don't think it was vindictive, but I was in a scenario where I was going to the mission field, and I flew all the way across the country to meet with this pastor. My thinking was, his daughter was a friend of mine at school, at university, and my entire thinking was, I want to speak with the pastor so I can find more churches to partner with. And her thinking was, why else is this guy going to come across the country than to see me? So this is where men can be really stupid. Men don't think clearly through things, and their heads are in the clouds. And you have to be very careful about this because you can hurt girls very easily. So I fly across the country, and I remember them picking me up at the airport. It is so stamped in my mind. She was dressed to the nines. I mean, it was full dress, full, beautiful dress. Both of her parents were standing behind her in the airport. They might even be holding like a balloon or something. And the moment I saw it, I knew I had blown this. And I think I was there for a few days. I tried to kind of fumble through it. And they tried to like get us in situations where we were together. And they said, here's the keys. Would you like to take a drive? And finally, I think a day or two in, I think I was even staying at their house. And finally, the father sat next to me. This is exactly what he should have done. In fact, he should have backhanded me. He sat next to me and he said, are you interested in my daughter or not? And I had to say, no. Do you know that the next day I was staying at someone else's house? Like they literally kicked me out of their house. And I think the last day they had me working some grunge job at the church or something like that. Now I can say, in all honesty, I had no evil motives, but that's not an excuse. Some guys string girls along just because their heads are in the clouds. That was me. Some guys do it vindictively. They know exactly what they're doing. They have a plan and they just want to have a chick by their side until they can find someone prettier or something like that. Both of those are bad. Latter one would be worse. But so guys, just a reminder, shoot straight. Be honest. Sometimes it might even be painful to them. Shoot straight. Be honest with your intentions. Number 8, I would say ensure consent. So I would make this a distinction from the earlier one where we said ask permission. So you're asking permission for the courting process, but then I would even say after that, make sure that you're asking the father. Now you're at the stage where you want to marry her. Ask the parents. Again, we see that in the story of Isaac and Rebekah. So make sure that you get permission from the parents, and make sure that the girl is consenting. Even if we talk about times there can be arranged marriage, Scripture always, even in arranged marriages, puts an emphasis on the girl has a right to say yay or nay. So let's remember to do that as well. And then number 9, let's call it buy a ring or buy cattle. People often will say, okay, this is lobola country, and I've written a lot about this. There's pros and cons of the bride price. Lobola, or the bride price, is a very big thing in African culture. My view on it is I'm not anti-lobola. My view is there are strong points to lobola. It can be done well. It's done in the Bible. It's a biblical principle. It oftentimes unites families. I think one of the great benefits of it is it shows commitment on behalf of the man. It's like a down payment. We use down payments with other things to show that you're serious. And we would even say we have lobola in our culture, Western culture, but it's called a ring. So we don't give the down payment of cattle to the parents. We just buy a ring and put it on her finger. However, there's lots of weaknesses too. Lots of weaknesses. Probably even more weaknesses than strengths. And what it does is it encourages, it can encourage bitterness. If they're charged too much, it can cause problems in the families. Lobola can encourage actually immorality because you can't pay this yet. We want to get married tomorrow. We can't get married tomorrow because the lobola is so high. We can't get married for 3 years. So that means, what are we supposed to do? And then they end up falling morally. So there's lots of weaknesses to it. But we do find some great examples in Scripture of, here are rings for your ears, and here are bracelets for your wrists. Already you're establishing giving gifts to the wife. She's going to give gifts back to you. She's going to spend her life serving the husband. The man is not made for the woman's made for the man. She's designed to be his helper. She finds fulfillment in that. The greatest gift she's going to give him is children. But on the front end, he's going to be giving gifts to her. So I think that's important. Either a ring or cattle.
That's good. And I can recall back to when my wife and I got married. The day after our wedding, we had a gift-giving ceremony, even between our families. And I paid lobola as well. And having gone through it, there are some disadvantages, and there are some things which are beautiful. My chest swelled with pride when her dad asked for the money, and I could say, yeah, I've saved up, I've put it aside, here it is. And I felt like a man from that. And that's not to negate all the abuses, but we've spoken much on that in past articles and past episodes. But that's just one of the points there as well.
So the final one is not necessarily how to find a wife, but let's just close it off of this. This would be actually how to protect yourself on the final stages of getting married. And if you've not experienced this yet, young people, I'm just preparing you for this. There is this weird shift that often goes on in the mind when you become engaged but not married. It's almost like she's halfway mine. If you have arrived at that stage where you become engaged and you haven't engaged in sexual immorality yet, like you're already in the 5% of relationship. It's just so rare. And praise the Lord for that. That's something that people should strive for. Strive to be virgins going into marriage. It will make your marriage better. It will have less regrets. You're going to teach your children to do so. It will please the Lord. It will be hard, but the Lord will bless you for that. If you get to the engagement process and you've still been pure, you're already unusual. But now there's going to be another kind of temptation because you're talking about the marriage and she has a ring on her finger and you're together more often. You're actually writing out wedding invitations. You're talking about a lot more intimate things. You might even be reading books about intimacy or marriage. You're looking at a flat to stay at or a house. You're looking at cars. I remember saying to Melinda, like, what kind of door do you want on the front of our house? Like our house. I literally say, in our house. So wait a minute, this is kind of, it's like a quasi marriage. And there are so many times that you almost get to the end and then there's pitfalls of sexual immorality. So I would say in this final step to just set out boundaries, set out parameters. And men, you should take the lead in this and not expect the woman to do this. So he can say, all right, these are the guidelines. We're not going to do this and we're not going to do this. Let's just wait till marriage. I just remember how we made I made a fool of myself on the kiss at our wedding. And you know what? It was worth it to be stupid and awkward because at the kiss, I went to kiss her at the altar and she freaked out and she turned her head. And this is a point of laughter with my children all the time, but she turned her head and it was a total swing and miss. And everyone laughed. And I look back and I say, you know, that little awkward embarrassment I'd rather have than I'm a 5-year pro at making out with this girl. Like, I would rather have it the other way around.
Yeah.
So set up guidelines. And I even think of Genesis 24, when here is the servant and coming closer, and the servant said, here is my master. And what does she do? Like, they're just on the doorstep of getting married. And even then, she took her veil and she covered herself. Like, already she was establishing a kind of modesty. She wasn't throwing herself at this man, even though they were just about to get married. There was a kind of shamefacedness. There was a kind of modesty. So I really think it's important, men, to both of you, but especially the man, to establish premarital guidelines in those early stages of the betrothal time before marriage.
That's good. And if you could just comment for us before we close it off on how long an engagement should be, because sometimes you establish those guidelines, but if you do things like in the world where your engagement is 5-8 years long, then you're just lighting the firecracker and expecting it not to explode when the fuse is so short. So any comments on the length and what an engagement period should serve, and that can guide how long to make it?
I'm a huge fan of short engagements. I don't see why an engagement should be longer than a year. I don't know what benefit. The point of the engagement time is just preparation. So there should already be preparation time even before the engagement. But because of the reasons I gave, long engagements will almost inevitably lead to sexual immorality. You're already this red-blooded animal at that time, looking to consummate what God has put inside of you. And that's already hard before engagement. But now, who can say they had a 3-year engagement or 2-year engagement and they lived purely? I just think it's almost impossible. So keep it short. Plan before you get engaged. You should already be talking about marriage, thinking, okay, when would we want this to happen? And I'm going to be graduating at this time, or this is when I'll get my raise for my job, or this is when we can do it. You're already talking about those things. Okay, I think by October, I think we can get married by October. Propose to her in May. Propose to her in May. You already did some groundwork for it, and then enjoy it.
Praise the Lord. What a treat, Mfundisi. To our audience, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to rate it and subscribe to keep posted with more upcoming content. Feel free to share this episode with someone who might find it interesting and submit any questions you may want answered in a future podcast. You can email those to paulschleiline@gmail.com. You can also visit betweentwocultures.com for other resources like this. I'm your host, Yamikani Katunga, and until next time, that's it from Missionary Minds.